Hello lovelies and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do a VR to three lovely ladies on YouTube. Meg over at Rose Honey Ritual, Thea over at Garden Goddess Tarot, and Wendy over at Wendy's Occult Compass. I'm going to do their tag 10 decks for 10 Sephira. So we are in the realm of the Tree of Life. It's a realm that I was studying anyway with this monster book, which is linked to the Tarot of the Spirit. The 10 Sephira, here they all are on their 3 pillars. I'm also going to add in a Sephira for the Abyss, for crossing the Abyss as well. Now, the 3 ladies have given us keywords for each Sephira. So the 10 Sephira, if you are new to the Tree of Life, which I am no expert in this, are these circles here, which start at the top at Kether, which is the crown, and which is the land place of the gods. I always consider that like our source energy, and we work our way down the Tree of Life all the way down to number 10 at the bottom, which is Malkuth, which is the place of earth reality where us humble humans reside. Is a bonus Sephira here, crossing the Abyss, which I'm also going to include. So we're on the Tree of Life, we're working down the Sephira. I am going to share the keywords that the tag comes with. I'm also going to include some extra keywords that my study in this book provided as well. I'm going to choose some decks that will land us, in my opinion, on the Sephira. So we're going to start at the bottom. We're going to start in Malkuth, in the realm of earth. So earthy decks, in the realm of the everyday. The keyword for that Sephira for the tag is kingdom. However, in this book, with the study of this book, my keyword that I've developed is radiance. What do you want to radiate out into the physical world? Thea mentioned this idea of Malkuth is where a thing becomes a thing. It's no longer the words of the gods or the energy of the gods. It's become tangible, real world. It's where a thing becomes a thing. So earthy, tangible, in the realm of the mortals. So for Malkuth, the key deck that jumped into my mind straight away was this one, the Witch's Wisdom Tarot. Of course, you've got the directional change in this deck, which keeps you walking towards earth. The mages are reversed. It's also very earthy. You've got very much the physical realm here. You've got the elements, you've got plants, you've got earth, you've got nature, you've got landscape, you've got animals. It's very much of the material world, but that order of the mages being reversed, where your journey starts at the heavens and returns to the earth, is very much a kind of Malkuth feel, I think, where enlightenment is coming down from the heavens and stepping into the kingdom and radiating your kingdom, like bringing that energy down, trying to hold on to that source energy and walking with it. So it's got everything, this deck. It's got the earthiness, it's got the real world aspect, it's got nature, but it's got that reverse direction as well. So that's my first deck from Malkuth, the Witch's Wisdom. It was the first one I thought of. I wanted to put in for this Sephira, the Many Queens Tarot, because this is really earthy, I think. So these are the backs on this one, but this is about humanness, the realm of us mortals. It's about bald spots and hairy legs and our wobbly bits and the very, very humanness of peopling in Malkuth. It makes me smile, this deck. I love it. The characters in here are just sublime. If any deck belonged firmly in the realities of Malkuth, I would say this is one of the decks that definitely belongs there. I love the humour of this deck. I don't really tend to go for black and white decks, but there is something just so charming and hysterically real about this deck that does just scream that 10th Sephira to me, and I just love it. So this is the Many Queens Tarot. It's a gorgeous deck, it's an unusual deck, it's great to read with. I really love it. It's definitely a Malkuth deck. So we're on number 9 now. We're on Yesod. Yesod is linked to the moon, and the key word for the tag is foundation. Meg talked about this as foundational needs. That's how she viewed Yesod. So what's your foundational needs before you get into the realm of Malkuth, which is the tangible everyday? My key word after studying this book is absorption. The universe absorbs and retains knowledge even as it evolves. And as humans, we retain our experiences, past, present and future, in symbolic systems, in our cultural storehouses of knowledge, and in our collective and individual consciousness and unconscious. What will you focus on? What do you want to absorb? So I'm asking the question, what is my foundation? What did I absorb to begin to create the filters and the ways of thinking and the moral compass for me to create the kingdom of Malkuth? The Sephira of the moon as well. For me, the moon in my spiritual practice is about staying grounded. And I always used to laugh at that, the fact that if I lose track of where the moon is in the sky, I feel ungrounded. The moon is a celestial body way away in the sky, so how could that be linked to my groundedness? Is groundedness a word? I think it is. But doing this tag, I got a big aha moment. It is about grounding the moon, and it is about a foundation of safety and where I'm at in the world, my viewpoint, my place on earth. It's the foundation of it all. It links into safety as well for me. Wendy spoke about this as energies underlying the material world, so something below that supports it. Again, there's that link to grounding, like the moon grounding you. It's like a subtle underlying energy that goes beneath, that gives everything a bedrock. Those subtle energies make me think of those witchy decks of ritual of the moon, of soil. It links very much this feeling of foundation and absorption with my witchy path, I think. This is the Moon Goddess affirmation cards. So as I said before, for me it just feels like a foundational energy that is subtle and barely perceptible, that is a bedrock beneath your feet, that is your filter on the world. It's what you're standing upon, that subtle energy, to then step into Malkuth to form your reality or your kingdom. So I just thought of the moon and how the moon makes me feel grounded, and grounding within my witchy practice. This just, it seems to be the perfect deck for this. This is by Terry Foss. She does have other decks on her Etsy channel. I don't know if you can get this one anymore, but I just think it just fitted perfectly with that idea of subtle energies beneath forming a foundation. The Stretch Tarot too, because for me this is the same sort of energy. The Stretch Tarot with these backs, it's that idea of a sort of a witchy energy almost, sort of linked to ritual or my spiritual practice, something that's subtle and beneath the surface, invisible layer that runs through everything, subtle shifts of energy. It just really does make me think of this sort of energy, something going on beneath the surface. All the decks, of all the tarot decks I've got, I think this is the one that most keys me in to that energy feeling. And it is a deck that feels full of earth and magic and grounding and a foundational subtle energy that flows beneath the more obvious, and I love it for that. Now we're up to Hod. Now the key word for Hod is glory or splendor. Hod is linked to Mercury, which is a planet very much about the mind, so the splendor of the mind, of thought patterns. My study in the Kabbalah book gave me a key word of symbolism, so that way of having a mindset that can turn things into symbols. It's the intellectualization of symbols and symbolic pictures. So a language that celebrates the power of the mind. So symbols, abstraction, encoding things. This book says of Hod, creating symbols to encode the experience of the past and present, and or to create the future consciously, is a trait inherent in the human species. The symbols you create contain the power to evolve the cosmos. So symbolism, splendor, glory, the power of the mind. It had to be, for me, the tarot of the spirit, because this tarot, not only is it one of the most beautiful tarot decks I think I've ever seen, but it really does play with that idea of symbolism, and it abstracts things out. When you get to the minors, look, you can see you've got this beautiful abstraction in there. It also is the deck that overlay came from, that I was using, and you can actually place it on the card to allow the tree of life to sit on the card. But I think it has this beautiful element of splendor and symbolism. It's just such a beautiful deck. I also wanted to include these two oracle decks that I keep in here. So combined in this deck, we've got the Sacred Geometry cards deck and the Sacred Geometry Oracle deck. Idea of abstraction out and patterns, sacred geometry we're stepping into here. So these are the backs of one of the cards, and then these are the backs from another deck. So I just combine these two. For a while I used to use these decks for meditation at my Morrigan altar, but now I use them just more for a general oracle deck. But I just think they're lovely. Great to key into that idea of being able to abstract things or turn things into symbols that have a greater meaning. So that splendor of the mind. And I just love it. We're traveling now into Sephira number 7, which is Netsack. Netsack is linked to Venus, so you've got links to love there. The key word for this is victory, but victory in love. Thea linked this to like eternal victory. There is no going back once you hit the victory of Netsack. It's transformative. And in this book, the key word that I got from the study in that book was transmutation. There is no going back. It's one form or condition meeting another form and changing permanently, which I suppose is what happens when you fall in love with somebody. It's one person meeting another person and you both transformed by that experience of love, eternal love, no going back from. This isn't a shallow one date only. This is eternal love, transmutation. Also, in my study of this book, it's not just like victory in love or love. It's also about creativity, about the transformation of items when we create as well. It says in here that the cosmological power of transmutation refers to an overarching change by which one form or condition, nature or substance converts or is converted into another form. The leap in condition or change in state is permanent. Activate your imagination to move even deeper into the creative surge that holds the new within and without. So creativity and transmutation are very much linked. Once you have created something from something else, you've changed its form forever, a bit like a love story. So I'm coming at Netsack from the idea of a permanent change, a transmutation, a love you can never come back from, or creativity that will change you permanently. I went for a really healing deck to start with. This is my pocket version of the Dreams of Gaia. For me, this is about self-love. Like I said before, for me, Netzach also ties into that idea of creativity. So the transformative power of love, that transmutation of once you've been affected, you can never go back. And I think this mystical world for me is an incredibly healing world, full of self-love that can change you and mean that you never go back. Thea also said that for her, Netzach was where the Fae lived, and fairy energy and Fae energy, and I think there is an element of that in here. And I am going to share another deck as well, which I use on my self-care altar, which is also a Fae deck. It's interesting that you start to see connections, everything's connected. So Netzach, transmutation, victory in love, self-love, and the Fae realm. It's funny that I wouldn't have chosen fairy decks, and yet I have two fairy decks out in front of me because I thought of self-love and the decks I use for transformation and transmutation around love and changes that you can't undo. The second Fae deck, which lives in this box on my self-love altar, is the journey into the hidden realm. I find that so surprising that there's synchronicities there. So this idea of being changed and love and eternal love, the close-up and personal aspect of this, I think ties into me with that idea of love and falling in love and change and things that will transform you. I think walking into a fairy forest will leave you forever changed, never to return back to your original state. And like I say, this is my deck I use for self-love, and I love it. It is one of the most beautiful, personal, loving, hard-hitting too decks that certainly does hold strong Fae energy and is perfect, I think, for Netzach. I couldn't move away from victory in love and an all-consuming love and transmutation through creativity without talking about the tarot avatar. So the love story of Frida and Diego, it was an eternal love that she could never walk away from. It was a love that was extreme and passionate and heartbreaking, but it lasted her entire life, and she transmuted the energy of that relationship that was often very hurtful into creativity. So you've got it all in this deck. She used her creativity to take aspects of her life that were all powerful and all consuming as love is, and especially her relationship with Diego, and she transmuted them into art. So you've got like a double transmutation there. You've got love and art, both of which you can never return from. A painted canvas will never be a blank canvas ever again. A broken heart will never forget the scars of that brokenness, even through healing. You've got it all here, and you've got the final victory of Frida and her spirit, and the iconic legend that she became, leaving behind the most incredible body of work. So I just couldn't leave this deck out of Netsack, which I think it firmly stands, and once you know Frida, again, you will be forever changed too. Sephira number 6 is Tipporeth, which is here on the column of equanimity. It's in the middle. It's about beauty, it's about harmony, it's linked to the sun, so it's joyous, it's beautiful, it's calm, beauty, adornment, these are all keywords. A pretty awesome place, Sephira number 6. The keyword is synergy, and it says that the cosmological power of synergy is the combined action of separate agencies which, when working together, have a greater total effect than the sum of their individual effects. So things coming together to get better. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So things that come together that are really, really good. Now, I think it was Thea that said number 6, Tipporeth, is where people like Jesus or the Buddha lived. This is about as high as you can go up the tree in human form. So if you're incredibly enlightened and wonderful, and everything around you becomes better and a bigger sum of its parts, then you're functioning at so synergy, things coming together, more than one thing layering in. For me, I am taking this Sephira as the idea of layers that, when combined, become a bigger sum of their parts. There's a synergy there to create something more beautiful. Beauty and synergy, it's all about layers. For me, it's about the elements combining. I know that I often race to Wales because of the big skies, and there's only big skies because it meets water, air meets water, and the two things become spectacular because they've met. So I immediately started thinking about the elements coming together and becoming bigger and better for their union. So for me, I started thinking about the ocean and the beach, also the garden where seeds meet soil and water is poured on and the sun comes down, gardens growing. For me, the beauty of Tipporeth is beautiful gardens, wild beaches. I think Wendy picked this one as well. For me, that synergy, that idea of layers, the Dame Darcy Mermaid Tarot is perfect for that. Where do I feel the most enlightened? At that point of Tipporeth where Jesus or the Buddha lives, walking on the beach, that layering, that synergy of big sky made bigger and more beautiful by the big expanse of water, the place where elements meet, that layering, making each part more beautiful for coming together. It's that layering of elements. I actually made a video about elements meeting and that zone where they each then become greater than their individual part. And for me, this deck makes me think of that. It makes me think of sunshine as well, and the summer. So this just seemed completely perfect for that idea of elements meeting the ocean, wild oceans and wild beaches. And then the Botanica Tarot, again the synergy and the layering of the beauty of a garden where seed meeting soil and water meeting seed and sunshine raining down on it will create a garden. The other place where I feel closest to the gods as a human, not only on the beach but in a garden, looking at flowers, looking at plants. It's that place of beauty and adornment where different things come together to create something more beautiful than the individual elements alone. It's that layering of environment and nature and ecosystems where true beauty resides. The adornment of flowers makes me immediately think of Frida yet again. Of course, the Tarot Avatar could easily for me have come into Tipporeth too, but I've gone for the garden and wild oceans for my Tipporeth. Okay, we're up to number 5 now, the tricky fives, the conflict of the fives. We're up to the safra of Geburah, and I hope I'm pronouncing these right. If I'm not, then forgive me, I am new to this. So Geburah, linked to Mars. It will be no surprise there that it's linked to Mars. Strength is the key word. Strength is needed within conflict, perfect for Mars, perfect for Geburah. Now my word in this book, cataclysm, the word cataclysm kept coming up, but I loved what this book had to say about Geburah. It says cataclysm, the cosmological power of cataclysm refers to a great flood or a deluge or any great upheaval that causes sudden potential disastrous change, as in an earthquake or in war. Cataclysm accelerates transformation. There is great value in the practice of accepting and working with the power of cataclysm as it arises with varying degrees of force in the course of our day-to-day lives. That idea of walking through the forest, the only way through is out. Cataclysm accelerating transformation. I loved that. That's why I love the word of cataclysm for this safra as well. And of course, to do that, you need strength. So strength to do the hard work, to choose the dark path. So for this one, we're very much in the realm of shadow work, not going around the issue, no spiritual bypassing here, but choosing the path through the middle of the dark wood to do the work. This is a fantastic oracle for not letting you bypass the dark woods, as is this tarot. We've got the dark mirror oracle and we've also got the dark grimoire tarot. These were 2 decks that I bought last year in my dark decks haul for exactly this reason. Both of them very dark. They won't let you get away with anything. They're decks really that will really kick you into shape, make you face the hard questions and address the issue head on. There is no escaping the dark woods with these two. It takes real strength to work with these decks, to face up to cataclysms within your own life. But walking onto the battlefield head on to face up to the conflict, to realise the severity of an issue. All those keywords, strength, severity, cataclysm, war, they're all here. These are the earthquake in tarot form, and they really have an important place because of that. So I have my shadow decks like that, but the two decks, my pairing that I couldn't possibly leave out of Geburah. For me, the two decks that have really held my hand in the middle of the dark woods are these two, the Nicoletta Ciccoli and the Zombie Tarot. There is something about this pairing for me that literally I come to when I've been on my knees with life, not knowing which way to turn, and these two decks combined have given me the strength to take the next step through the dark wood. They're literally that important. They have pulled me forward and given me understandings when I literally couldn't go any further. These two decks keying very much into the conscious and the subconscious, the hidden things of battle, the gaslighting, the tougher aspects of how people can be cruel and what you may get caught up in. It's a clear path through smoke and mirrors if you are confused by smoke and mirrors. These are a combination of decks that will unveil childhood traumas and issues that you might be so conditioned to that you won't see them. This is your path through the dark woods to be able to see clearly and drop conditioned stories that those without your best interests may have cloaked you in. Now we're back to on the Pillar of Mercy for Sephira number 4, which is Hesed. So Hesed, the key word here is mercy. I think Wendy called this the loving ruler. Of course, 4 is the Emperor card, isn't it? The loving ruler. 4 is also a number of stability. The four-legged chair being more stable. So stability and a loving ruler, mercy, unconditional, real love for people, pure love and divine love. Now, in this book, they talk about Hesed as stabilization. The process of stabilization is directly related to discernment. So an emperor ruler needs discernment. The universe stabilizes what it values. What do you value enough to stabilize? So being kept stable, being led with mercy, divine love, a loving ruler, with that wisdom, that discernment, being valued within a stable environment. Those are the things that I considered when I chose my decks for Hesed. It had to be this deck here, the Black Madonna, and also my Mother Mary Oracle. Again, I've gone from personal gnosis of experiencing Mother Mary energy coming in, which was a huge surprise for me, which happened with an experience in the Glastonbury Gardens, which the Chalice Well Gardens, which I've spoken of before on the channel, and just synchronicities around Mother Mary energy. It is that mercy, that stabilization that I needed in my life, that loving ruler, somebody that can sweep you up in their arms and give you guidance which you can trust, almost like a mothering energy. It's full of mercy. It's not a cruel leadership for its own desires. And these two decks for me, I use for that part of my spiritual walk. So for me, I couldn't talk about Hesed without bringing these two really beautiful decks into the mix. And another deck that I have to talk about when we're in the Sephira of Chesed is the Weaver's Oracle. This for me feels like the wise woman, the bedrock of a community, the grandmother that you go to, the embedded story within your genealogy that supports you and you can explore. The meditations and the conversations that I've had with these characters in these cards have been full of wisdom, full of mercy, full of leadership, full of kindness and wisdom. It is a very supporting, grounding deck that feels safe and stable. So for me, this deck too is just perfect for Chesed. So here you've got the invisible Sephira now, which is, I think you pronounce it Daath. It's where the high priestess would live. It's this bridge across the abyss from this part of the tree into the triad at the top, which is more like the heavens and source energy. So to cross the abyss, what deck did I choose for that hidden Sephira? So it could only be one deck for crossing the abyss, for stepping into the realm of source energy, and for me it's this one, the Geburah, the Magician's deck. It even has an abyss card in here. The whole purpose of this deck is to take us into different realms. There we go, there's the abyss card. So from the mortal realm into a place where the gods reside, into a place where mortals can't go. This is a deck designed to let us explore magic pathways across the abyss into these other realms. So for me, there was only this one choice for crossing the abyss and the hidden Sephira of Daath. It was this one, the Magician's deck. So Sephira number 3, we've crossed the abyss and we're now at Binah. So the mother Sephira, the great womb, the number 3, after a union there's the expansion. In my research, the key word in here is creation. Again, that idea of things coming from the womb, things being created, associated with the queens and the 3s. So creation, understanding. Sometimes with understanding we create new things, and that's not always easy. Like birth isn't easy, things that come from the womb aren't easy. This reminds me of how I view the 3 of Swords, the 3 swords coming in, and I view that as there was a choice to make in the 2, but the 3 is actually holding the 3rd sword yourself and allowing yourself to see clearly enough to get a clear understanding, not to deceive yourself, to face up to the difficult truths. Sometimes understanding truth is the hardest thing we can do, which is why I think the 3 of Swords fits so brilliantly here, and it's why I love to see 3 of Swords cards where the sword, the dagger, is being held by the person themselves. And I think once we are brave enough to take on that level of understanding, then we really do begin to create our own world without being led by other people. We can't be blinded anymore. It leads to true creation for our own personal tree of life the directions that we should be going in and not be being led in. Understanding and creation, they both come together there, and it doesn't surprise me that that's where the threes live. So Binah for me is twofold. It's that will to form, that will to take on an understanding in the dark womb, an understanding that will break your own heart, that you're willing to take on. It's definitely a place firmly on the pillar of severity. And these two decks, which are the tarot of the Sweet Twilight and of course the Deviant Moon tarot, they're Three of Swords, because of course Binah is for the threes. Just a perfect example of this. In this Three of Swords, she's actually piercing X marks the spot through her own heart. It's that understanding, that third thought that comes in that completely overrides the decisions needed to be made in the two. It's the decision that overrides everything else, that hard, dark decision where you have to face truth. You see it again in the Deviant Moon. Look, she's putting her own finger on the third sword as the storm rolls in. It's an acceptance of the storm coming in, that will to form, that will to accept, that understanding that feels like birthing pains. So we've got that idea of the mother on the pillar of severity. But like I said before, becoming a mother is not easy either. It is putting ourselves up against the sword willingly. And I think these two decks both bring in that understanding, but in a way that we've chosen it. And I think for that reason, both of these decks fit brilliantly on Binah, for that idea of that difficult understanding. The Tower of the Sweet Twilight also does a weird thing with the positive cards. It puts a tough twist on all the positive cards, and I think that's very Binah too. It's being willing to face the darkness of some of these elements of life. But it also, before I leave Binah, which is of course the idea of creation and the great womb and the great mother, I can't possibly leave Binah without these two decks. So this is the Dark Goddess Tarot, and this one over here is the Celtic Wisdom Tarot, because they both have that idea of being in the realm of the gods, or in this deck it's like the portals to the Celtic otherworld, where in that realm. But they also both have Sheila Gigs in there, that great womb, that portal to another world. And because of that, I just think both of these decks really take you to a understanding that is beyond our realm. We're in the realm of gods and of myth and of fantastical events that bring a deeper understanding. They're both otherworld decks. That it's like stepping into a mysterious womb. They both also, for me, have mother energy within them too. So the will to form is here. It's the dark sea of Binah, the great womb. I think it's embodied in both of these decks, and for that I also had to share these two for Binah as well. Sephira number 2 now, which is Hawkma, which is the father. So we had the mother here, the father here. I love the way Thea talked about two things being awareness, because once you've got more than one thing, they have an awareness of each other. That links to the key word of wisdom. You're suddenly wise. There's an awareness there of something else, or the law of attraction as well. And I think that comes into play when I look at my study in here, where the key word for Hawkma from this book is attraction. Meg talked about a biblical deck because it's the wisdom of, like, the voice of God. So anything sort of biblical would work here. So the voice of a sacred creator, wisdom, and the attraction of different things now that two things are possible. So for Hawkma, that idea of a father creator, that kind of unmanifested energy of wisdom, matter not yet really formed. I went for the Shimmering Veil. Out of all of my decks, this one feels like being in that space of Hawkma, up in that top triad of Sephira, where matter first becomes aware of itself in the twos, where one thing now becomes aware of another thing, but it's still kind of unmanifested. That very first attraction, one thing to another, the wisdom and awareness developing. This is definitely in that space, I think, and fits brilliantly with that idea of attraction and wisdom, the words of a sacred father. It's very otherworldly and heavenly, and it's beyond the Shimmering Veil, like the deck says. So for me, this just seemed perfect for Sephira number 2 for Hawkma. And finally, we make it to the top of the tree, to Sephira number 1 at the top, Kether. The key word for this in the tag is crown. It's the crown at the top. Kether is the state where we're still at source energy. It's the realm of the gods. It's before anything has become manifested. It's the realm of the unmanifested. In this book, the key word isn't crown, it's origination. Everything in the universe has its origins in the beginning of the universe. Everything is original. Everything originates. So that idea of source energy before anything else has manifested. And for me, the one deck that I really wanted to pick for this Sephira is the Margaret Peterson Tarot. For me, this embodies that unmanifested source energy, and also the guidebook for this. It's small and yet it just packs such an incredible punch, almost more than any other guidebook ever, and yet it's a little white book. It really is so full of enlightenment and sort of source energy advice. It is a deck that embodies origination for me. The imagery is still very energetic. There is the potential for things to form, but we are still very much in origination here, and just pure energy forms. And I just think this is one of the most spectacular decks that I own, and it just embodies that energy of Sephira number 1 of Kether. This is the first edition. There is a new edition out at the moment which has got the burgundy borders, which I'm very tempted to also purchase when I am out of no buy year. But yeah, the Margaret Peterson Tarot for Sephira number 1, right at the top of the tree of life. I just thought it seemed perfect. So that's it, guys, my 100 billion decks for 10 Sephira. I hope you enjoyed that. A big thank you to Meg, to Thea and to Wendy for their wonderful channels for this tag, their wonderful informative videos as well. All 3 channels are an absolute joy to watch and in my absolute favourites on YouTube. I'll leave all their links below. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye.